Do you know what the most basic fishing literacy is? I want to be an experienced fisherman, being able to sleep out at night. It's the only way I can do it the next day. Caught the big fish of my dreams. It's a waste of time though, but you can envy other fishers. It is said that there is a fierce freshwater fish turned up in the waters of the red mat. They are even stronger than some deep-sea fish, and greedy and scary, because it has 700 teeth, and there are dogs and people in the recipe. They are freshwater creatures called pike, and it's said to have been 3 fish weighing over 90 pounds. And most of those words came from Erlen. But in the last few days, studies have shown that these are not fake. Those scientists used to specialize. Check out where the 3 giants hooked up. It turns out these fish aren't just any pike. They're genetically different from other fish. This makes people very curious. What's really different about the fish there? Go with Jeremy. I'm going to go to Lake Durge first. And this lake has existed for a very long time. There are many living things in it. It's going to teach Jeremy a lot of things. Then he came to a castle. It's also where 90-pound pike have been caught before. As Jeremy got off the plane and immediately came to the lake, a simple survey was conducted and do some research through books. Jeremy identified 3 locations. Prepare to proceed in these places. A good investigation, as he recorded everything. Also found a local off to the lake to throw the pole. And on the way there, Jeremy also found out from the captain. He spent 20 minutes here. I caught a 40-pound pike, and not so long ago. As the 2 arrived at the designated place, Jeremy put the pole in place immediately. But the bait is not meat. It's some fake bait. After all, those pike are still better. Like to eat those active fish. But there's a downside. That's the bait too heavy, which makes it look like something's on the hook. And because pike are fast, Jeremy has to be on his guard, or the pole is more likely to break. And lost a couple $100 of fishing rods. But when the rain stops here, those rods are still not responding, which makes Jeremy kind of bored, just wandering around there. But then the rods suddenly responded. Jeremy hurried forward to retrieve the thread. As the fish are pulled out of the water, quickly picked up the net, got the fish on the boat. Although this fish is not huge, but this pike is still quite a catch. With Jeremy releasing the fish back into the lake, it also confirms that there are plenty of pike here. But after 6 hours of fishing, there was no follow-up, which makes Jeremy a little weird. So in order to understand more, Jeremy found the area specifically. Someone who studies the pike, Professor Stefano Mariani. It was the team that learned about them. DNA from the pike in the lake. 3 years of research. And then I found something very interesting. These fish arrived here 10,000 years ago, but here it evolved into what it is today. It turns out to be for other fish. A ferocious predator. This also leads to other lakes. This predator also appeared, but now there are more problems. Those pike are still there. For this, after leaving the institute, took out a large map. Start looking for ways to get those fish. A place where you can grow safely. And, based on everything we know, Jeremy identified some places. Those are the 3 places. But I have to go to Stockholm first. With Jeremy on the plane, also arrived at the position in half an hour. Because the environment here is very beautiful. The ecosystem is perfect. Jeremy had a lot of confidence. Here you can get what you want. And that place is Cillian Lake. It's the same as the lake in front. It's been around for tens of thousands of years. And the beautiful sight here just put Jeremy right where he was. But he came to his senses. To be able to fish here, Jeremy is going to buy a boat first. But he doesn't speak Swedish. But the good news is most people here speaking English too. That's how Jeremy got it. As he began to sail across the lake, it was not long before we reached our destination. As Jeremy takes out the bait, some fishing rods were set up. I really believe these can. Able to reel in giant pike in the water. But he still had an insurance policy. That is to turn each bait. They're all placed at different depths. And one side of the sonar detector. So we can be sure how many big fish there are down here. Then suddenly one of the fishing rods responded. Jeremy quickly stepped forward and picked it up. And start on the recycling line. As he pulls the fish to the surface, grab the net, and get it on board right away. After Jeremy took the hook off, pick it up slowly. But it turns out it's not a pike. It's his relative, the zander. But such a big fish. You can also see it in here. There should be plenty of pike too. With Jeremy releasing the fish. And continue to fish there. But after I fucked that zander. But the rest of the time, no more gains. Although it made Jeremy very curious. But at least we know what's inside. There must be a lot of pike. In order to understand more clearly, Jeremy's going to talk to the locals, but it happens to be by a river. There were 2 of them swinging. Jeremy hurried forward, say hello to the 2 fishers, and I got it from both of them. A moderately good piece of news. That's most of the pike. Most of them are still at sea, which makes Jeremy a little weird. The ones that are freshwater fish themselves. How do you live in salt water? But as a good fishing enthusiast, in the fresh water of South Africa, caught a giant bull shark, but species that can tolerate both fresh and salt water. There don't seem to be any pike. In order to be able to understand more comprehensively, Jeremy came to the town of Trosa, prepared to depart from here for the sea. See if you can catch a pike there. With Jeremy on a boat, and follow the captain. Head to the Atlantic Ocean around here. And from the captain, there really are pike in the sea. But because the boat is too bumpy in the sea, Jeremy found a place where the water was calm. As he began to swing, I found my target position, but with one swing after another, doesn't seem to have much to gain. But Jeremy didn't give up. Instead, he kept swinging the fishing rod, and the hard work pays off, with Jeremy's bait being bitten. The captain also quickly picked up the net. The fish in the water were brought to the boat, and this pike is in my hands, and it proves that there really is this creature in the sea. As hard as this is to believe, but the facts are there. But to ensure rigor, Jeremy made it to shore, took out a stick, test to see if it's salt water. But when Jeremy took the probe out, the above instrument shows 6.1 here. This proves that the water here is not fresh. But at the same time, it's not exactly seawater, although it means they can't survive in salt water. But you can also see them have adapted to living in salt water. It's pretty amazing, but that's only part of the fish here. Doesn't prove the pike here all have completed this kind of evolution. In order to understand more comprehensively, Jeremy is going north to the lakes. It's basically cut off from the sea. You should see some differences. With Jeremy came Sadish Alprin. I found one right away. Local fishing at the lake. And in Jeremy's conversation, I learned this guy's name is Oscar. I've been fishing for pike here for a long time. I know everything about this place. Jeremy hurried to invite him, and Oscar readily agreed. Who let fishing pike, basically, has become his life. Not to mention knowing those fish may have been genetically altered. It's even more exciting, as the two men boarded the boat, and we're going to the fishing spot right away. After all, this is a place Oscar knows well. He's got a lot of hot spots. As the two arrived at their destination, Jeremy starts swinging right away, but then he suddenly realized, there's a pike right in front of you. It's not that big though, but it's perfectly enough. But the bait is in front of him. The fish didn't respond at all, which makes Jeremy a little weird. Maybe the temperature is too low, so he doesn't have an appetite. But Jeremy doesn't feel that way, as he throws the rod out again, and that brings the bait back, in front of the pike, and this time it just bit on it. After catching it with a net, Jeremy has tweezers ready too, as the fish was carried into the boat. Also took a scale from it, ready to be used as a study sample. Get it back and check for DNA. With the completion of sample collection, Jeremy put it back in the water too. It was then immediately returned to land. Take it to the genetics lab. Meanwhile, Jeremy was still in the lake and continue his swing, although for now, there's always pike on the hook, but there's nothing Jeremy wants. It's basically just little fish. This made him a little puzzled, so the two men, in order to be able to catch the big thing, decided to go a little deeper and prepare to have a death fight here. But Oscar panicked. After all, in those places, cell phones don't even get a signal. If something goes wrong, there will be no assistance. But in the end, Oscar did. Stay with Jeremy and go deeper. There was a camera crew. After all, this is a safer opportunity to explore. Probably not many times in my life. As the next day came, Oscar and Jeremy get on the boat, ready to start exploring that uncharted territory. As the two experienced more than an hour of driving, also came to one of the destinations of this trip. Although the environment here has changed a lot, but it didn't make a difference. Jeremy's obsession with the swing, as he retrieves the line to the side of the boat. There's a pike hanging from it. That's pretty amazing, and the fish is in good shape. And look at those sharp teeth. And you can see it here. There must be giant pike. But as it got darker, the two also made it back to shore. Even though it wasn't a productive day, but there's still a lot of time. Two people can still grind here slowly. The only problem was not being able to take a hot shower. But when the night really came, Jeremy found out something. That's 90 pounds of pike. It's like going from legend to reality. Although I don't know why. But genetic changes must be a factor. By this time, Oscar had cooked too. Just take Jeremy, who's still brooding. Jira came back to reality. After all, they're both really hungry now. With a new day, Jeremy got a phone call out of the blue. But this is the producer calling over satellite. I don't know how many necklace a minute takes. And after the call, Jeremy got some good news too. That's the scale before. Genetic studies have been done, and the result is the pike here. Fish with anywhere else. They're all genetically different, and this discovery was a surprise. But there's one more problem with the current Jeremy. That's this different kind of pike can grow into a huge size. And to be able to explore that, the two decided to go further, see if he could find anything. With the continuous deepening of the ship, that's where Jeremy sees the difference. That is, the ecology here is very good. Why, you ask? Then look at what's in his hand. This thing is a very ancient form of vegetation, and this thing is bad for the environment. It has very demanding requirements, and here it's growing in patches. It can also be seen from this. It's as if the ecology has never changed. But there is this phenomenon. It often means that the fish here are very easy to catch. As Jeremy throws the rod out of his hand, like it just fell on something, that's kind of rare. but on the way to the recycling line. But the fish broke free from the hook. So Jeremy quickly threw another stroke. I just didn't think I'd win again. Just caught the old man off guard. But as an experienced fisherman, it managed to pull it to the surface. Even got it on the side of the boat. Follow the net and bring it on board. Jeremy quickly picked him up, and that allowed him to see the size of this one. It's nearly 1.4 meters. This made him very happy. After all, that was the last question he had. It also proves that this newly discovered fish, and it can grow into something huge, and it can be caught in salt water and fresh water, although this is limited to some areas. But for anglers and scientists, it's a very exciting thing. After all, there's still a lot we don't know about this fish. Well, that's all for this program. Give it a thumbs up, and let's look forward to the next episode. Trying to catch a monster like this. Let's learn from this fishing guy. Start by setting up some fishing rods on the shore. The point is the bait can't be small. There has to be technology and hard work up there, although it will attract the attention of the FBL. But don't worry, because people can eat. Little fish are crying with greed. The most important thing when you hook a monster, take out your phone and shoot vlog. I'm not going to get a thumbs up. It's said to be in a lake in Europe. There lurks a ferocious beast. They say there are men on the south side of the lake. I saw this mysterious creature there. But this is very strange. Although in the 16th century, then someone saw this. A creature that looks like a snake or a dinosaur, but in a place like this. So now someone can see it again. For Jeremy to be able to master. Here's the first-hand news. Prepare to head to Lazatel Beach first. There's a man there who claims to have seen it. This beast of a man, because people here rarely speak English. Before Jeremy came here, an emergency language study was conducted. As he met the man, it was also quickly questioned. Angelo also tells the story. When he was on the water, all of a sudden, there was a loud noise. When he looked over, but it's too late, and I've only seen a little. But you can also see that it's huge. It's about 10 feet long. At the same time, the beast's body was flat and long. As ridiculous as this testimony sounds. But Angelo is an angler. He must have a good eye for the water. And through these words, Jeremy's probably figured out the size of the beast too. But there wasn't just one witness. With Jeremy finding Clara, also from the former swimmer, learned something else. And the reason she was, because he is afraid to continue swimming in the water. Jeremy got it from her too. This creature has a hunchback and releases bubbles. After listening to these descriptions, Jeremy started getting excited all of a sudden. Big, challenging things like this. But it's very rare. So he immediately found a boat. Get ready to explore their spot. See if you can find anything. Follow him to the place. Quickly picked up the fishing rod, began to shake. Although this rod may not catch the big thing. But the purpose of his visit is not a mysterious creature. It's about exploring that thing. Why? Always wandering the coast. Both sightings were not far from shore, after all. Although there is the first fish on the hook. But it's obviously not big. It doesn't explain the mystery. As Jeremy keeps swinging, I hooked a base again, even a few shots back there. Only the base are taking the bait. And that's pretty obvious. There's a lot of life in this lake. Though now it has been proved that the conditions of the mysterious creatures. But here is a 32-mile-long lake. Hook up this mysterious predator. Not ideal, obviously. So Jeremy went to a library. Ready to take a look here. Since the 16th century, everything we know about this creature. And Jeremy was very lucky. The search soon led to clues. Although there is no description of the mysterious creature. But it tells the story where it used to be. But Jeremy wasn't convinced. What is this unrecorded creature? So he began to search. Could match the creature described by the witness. And after hours of searching, there are also more compatible organisms. Sturgeon, which can grow to huge sizes. And the fish often like to come to the surface. And it can grow up to 20 feet. But here's something really interesting. That is, sturgeon did in the past. It exists in the sea around here. But in more recent times, because they catch a lot of caviar here, the sturgeon that led to it were almost wiped out. But that's the only direction we have right now. Jeremy still wants to try. Followed him to two fishers. After their elaboration, no sturgeon ever appeared here. The only big thing is carp. And the maximum is only 4 feet. Then I saw another fishing guy. Quickly came forward to ask again. Turns out I never saw any sturgeon. That made Jeremy a little confused. No one here has ever caught a sturgeon. They seem to be extinct here. What else could it be now? But luckily Jeremy found something in the library. That's where the mysterious creature appeared. What if we find something there? Follow him to the sea. And found a very helpful person. They don't just have underwater detectors. And he knows these waters very well. That makes Jeremy excited. After all, if we can't pump the water out of here, Jeremy wants to do this whole thing. As they arrived at the destination of their trip, people also began to do final preparation of the instrument before launching. With the instruments all ready, and put things slowly into the water, Jeremy went to see it right away. The feedback from the instrument, with the machine down 180 feet. It was also here that I saw many ancient rocks, and the caves and the records, but still nothing. There was no sign of life at all. This made Jeremy very uncomfortable. Hurriedly tried to make the machine go further, but it's too narrow here. The machine can no longer move forward. As the crowd took things back, Jeremy is off the trail again. But there's a nice place nearby. There are many local fish, although the fish in this tank is not big. But Jeremy made an unexpected discovery. That's the sturgeon in front of you. This is very exciting, although it's extinct in the wild. But there are also captive ones. But it made him wonder again. That's where this sturgeon came from. So Jeremy immediately went to the boss. I heard it from him, although still extinct in the wild. But there's a breeding farm, and it's not that far from here. It only takes half an hour. You can get to this sturgeon farm. As Jeremy arrives at his destination, I see a lot of sturgeon here. Quickly came forward to ask. We know it's an extinct sturgeon out there, but his profit motive is not strong. It's about turning these fish, quietly released from the Pearl River. But that has nothing to do with Jeremy's question. Followed him slowly into the water. I'm going to catch a fish first and deal with this sturgeon, just like with the sharks. That is to pick it up, turn it over slowly. Although the process is a little messy, but still manage to pull it off. Although this fish is only 5 feet, a little different from the legendary creature, but the rest of his traits match. That's the hump and the bubble on the back. And that's exactly how Clara described it. As Jeremy sets this fish free, I want to look at the young sturgeon and release it back into the wild. And along the way, Jeremy got some news. There seems to be a creature in this river. He swallowed the sturgeon he had just put down. The fish is also known locally as the torpedo, but it's just a common name. Its real name is indeed catfish. And Jeremy hadn't known that before. That is, when the conditions are right, they can grow up to 10 feet. But they are mainly located in Central and Eastern Europe. It's not supposed to be here. With Jeremy asking questions, I learned something too. The water is getting warmer here, causing these creatures to start moving in. It has also spread up the Pearl River. And then Jeremy remembered something. That's the description Angelou used to give. Exactly like the catfish here. But now there is another question. That's whether this fish has Lake Garda. So Jeremy immediately began to explore. And then he suddenly made a discovery. It's like there's a catfish in Lake Iseo. And the lake is also connected to the Pearl River. Lake Iseo is also on top of Lake Garda. If there are catfish in this lake, then we can be sure of one thing. Something Angelo once found. It's this catfish creature. With him came the small town of Iseo Lake. I found one too. Someone willing to show him the lake. As the two men boarded the boat, in the middle of the lake, and in front of it is a fishing net. The two quickly came forward and began to recover. The first fish to appear were sardines, but in the back of the constant net. And find something. It's broken the net, but it also proves that this lake, there are big fish. As the two continued to pull in the net, I managed to pull in a big catfish, but the fish got away with it. Even Jeremy's dragnet, they didn't bring it on board, although the fish got away. But Jeremy is already sure of one thing. That's in this lake. There are catfish in Lake Iseo. So you can be sure. They're in Lake Garda too. Now that we know for sure what the mystery creature is. But Jeremy still wants to see it. What that giant thing looks like. So I decided to go to another place. That's the biggest dam on the Pearl River. See if you can find anything in there. As he successfully reached the position, I'm leaving on my own right now. Because catfish like to be where there's plenty of oxygen. So the two men went to the wall. Although fishermen are forbidden to hunt here. But Jeremy's already got it. Special permission from the local government. As the two men prepared by the river and put the bait in the river while they were demonstrating how to do it. And suddenly there's a fish on the hook. Jeremy was pleasantly surprised. Quickly start on that line. But this fish is a little stronger. But the accident happened at this time. Fish hooked suddenly from the river, back in his hands. And when he looked at the hook, it was very exciting. Quickly took out his secret weapon with these live earthworms as bait for the catfish. As he puts things into the water, and he pulled out another thing. That's the stick in his hand. Just keep pounding this thing on the water. It will attract the catfish out. With Jeremy there for an hour, and there's been no reaction. So he took out the hook, only to find earthworms on it. And you don't know when. Most of it was eaten. That made Jeremy a little dumbfounded. As the sun gradually set in the west, the two men came to the island near the dam. But in order not to waste the time, Jeremy's got a decoy, walking around on the lake. And then they returned to the island and fixed the fishing rod to the shore. But just to make sure I don't miss it, when a fish is on the hook, Jeremy tied something to a pole, and this thing only feels wobbly. You can beep right away. As the sun goes down, their poles have been unresponsive, but after the night is over. But suddenly a few people arrived. That's the local FBL. Jeremy's a little nervous though, but they just looked at the two. Any information on fishing here? After all, there are often poachers here. As the two men re-entered the tent, another 3 hours of waiting, and still no reaction. So he prepared to rest first. But at this time, suddenly, there was a beep. So the two quickly ran up. As Jeremy begins to return to the line, a smile appeared on his face. But after I got it back, but it turns out it's just a small fish. It was a disappointment to him. I had to put the pole back in place and went back to sleep in his tent. But this thing is not comfortable. He's having trouble sleeping. But then the alarm went off again. So the two men ran across again. As Jeremy begins to reel in again, the fish was found to be very strong. It's obviously a huge thing, and it's probably what he wants. That makes Jeremy happy. It's even kind of sick, but the fish is too heavy. Jeremy was there for a long time to pull it to the surface, and even then let him be sure. This could very well be it. Something Angelo used to describe. As Jeremy pulls him to shore, I also saw this thing, quickly ran up to the front, and pulled it straight to shore. Then he quickly took out a measuring stick. Turns out this thing has 8 feet, by the size of this catfish. We can see the mysterious creature Angelo was talking about. This is the catfish. And look at that huge mouth. You can see how big this fish can get. There are some reasons. Well, that's all for this program. Give it a thumbs up, and let's look forward to the next episode.